Hi, it's Maija here and welcome to my mega wrap-up of all the books and comics that I didn't talk about in 2018 because I sucked at doing wrap-ups in 2018. So I decided to go through everything that I didn't mention last year in this one huge wrap-up. So this is a wrap-up for basically March to June and then my December wrap-up because I only read 4 things in December and I didn't feel like doing a separate December wrap-up. I'm pretty sad because I actually had my March and all the short ones readathon wrap-up written down, but I didn't actually ever end up filming it. So because I had those things written down, I just went and added them as reviews on Goodreads. But this is books 24 to 97, as well as 129 to 132 that I read in 2018. I will not have a lot of these books to hold up for you because I read mostly from the library or as ebooks in 2018, and I will go through all of these by rating. But let's go and let's leave 2018 behind us. So let's start with my 2-star reads. These are books that I just wasn't that into. They might not be bad books, but they just weren't for me. And the first of those was Odinin Lapsi by Siri Pettersen, also known as Odin's Barn in the original Norwegian. This one hasn't been translated to English, but it was a young adult Norwegian fantasy book. Next one was Muumit ja suuri tuhotulva, or The Moomins and the Great Flood in the English translation. And this is an early Moomin novella or story that I would only recommend to Moomin completionists. Then the comics that got 2 stars were Slam Volume 1 by Pamela Ribbon and Veronica Fish. This was a young adult comic about roller derby that I got as part of a bigger humble bundle of comics. Next was Knight's Dominion Volume 2 by Ted Nathy, which is a high fantasy adult comic, which I think has more potential than it delivers. I didn't really like the first volume, and then I hoped more for the second volume, but I didn't like that one either, which is sad because I really like the author and I really love his Courtney Crumrin middle grade comic series. Next was In Real Life by Chen Wang from a story by Cory Doctorow, and in this one I really loved Chen Wang's expressive art, but I wasn't that into the story. Everyone's an Alien Where You're an Alien Too by Chomni Sun was this naivistic and cute science fiction comic about belonging. Snotch Girl Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Brian Lee O'Malley and Leslie Hung sadly also got 2 stars from me. I wanted so bad to get into this. I really like Brian Lee O'Malley's other work. I had high hopes again for Volume 2 to really click with me. I just couldn't get into this. My favorite thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris is a well done, highly awarded graphic novel which dealt in topics that weren't for me. There was also Alone by Christophe Chaboutez, which was this random graphic novel that I picked up from the library and read it in one go because it was almost a wordless comic. And I really liked the line work. It was in black and white, but I didn't care for the story. And then finally, the final 2-star comic is Harrow County Volume 8, Done Come Back by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook. I hadn't been into this Southern Gothic horror comic series for a while, but this was the final volume and I wanted to complete the series. Then the only thing that got 2.5 stars was Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shannon Maguire, and this particular installment of the Wayward Children series just didn't interest me, and I've said before that I don't go well with high nonsense worlds. Now we're moving on to the 3 stars, and these were all fun reads that I enjoyed but didn't love. Let's go through the books first, and the first of those is the superhero novella Superior by Jessica Lack. This tells about a superhero's intern who falls in love with a supervillain's assistant, and that is a male-male romance. Then was Death in the Clouds by Agatha Christie, which is a Poirot mystery where a murder happens on a plane. The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie was another Poirot mystery, this time the killer goes in alphabetical order. Before Mars by Emma Newman also got 3 stars. This is the 3rd novel in the Planetfall series, and so far it's my least favorite. It didn't work for me as well as the others because I knew from the start what was going on. Passing Strange by Helen Klages was a historical novella with some magic, and it is a love story between 2 women set in 1940s San Francisco, but the writing style just didn't let me in. The Abyss Surrounds Us by Emily Skrutsky was the first book in a young adult post-apocalyptic science fiction duology, and it has pirates and trained sea monsters, and there is starting a romance between 2 girls, and I think that will probably feature more in the 2nd book. There's also Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim, which was a charming classic about a holiday in Italy, but I didn't really understand one character pairing at the end. And the final 3-star book was Yö ei saa tulla by Tiina Raivaara, which was a Finnish horror book taking inspiration from E.T.A. Hoffman's The Sandman. Moving on to the comics, the first 3-star comic was The Stone Heart, the second in the Nameless City series by Faith Erin Hicks. And this is a middle grade fantasy comic focusing on the friendship between Kaidu, a boy from an invading force, and Rat, a girl born in the city, and it also features the political turmoil in the Nameless City. Black Bolt Volume 1 by Saladin Ahmed and Christian Ward is a superhero comic with gorgeous art, but focusing on a character that I'm just not that interested in. I also gave 3 stars to Fullmetal Alchemist Volumes 3, 5, 8, 12, 14, 20, 22, 26 and 27 by Hiromu Arakawa. And this is a fantasy manga that I read completely in 2018, and these particular volumes weren't my favorites of the series. Persephone by Alison Shaw was a Persephone and Hades retelling with really cute art that I enjoyed a lot more than the story. Monthly Girls Nosaki-kun Volume 1 by Izumi Tsubagi is a comedy yonkoma manga about this high school boy who is secretly a very popular shoujo manga creator. This might work better for me in anime form, so I will check that out. Adulthood is a Myth by Sarah Anderson is a collection of very relatable comic strips about her life. Natsume's Book of Friends Volume 1 by Yuki Midorikawa was a fancy manga that I tried out. It's about this boy who can see yokai, so sort of spirits and demons, and it consisted of these episodic stories, and it had a very calm but somehow melancholic atmosphere, but I wasn't that interested to continue on with the series. Clean Room Volume 1 Immaculate Conception by Gail Simone and John Davis Hunt was an interesting one. It's a horror comic with monsters and cults, and the main character's fiancé kills himself because of this self-help guru cult leader, and the majority of the characters are women. This is gory and bloody, and the demons are very crass, but I was very interested in the world and lore. During the first half I was reading, oh well, I tried it out, it wasn't for me, 2 stars. But then I was interested in second half, so maybe I'll read more from the library. We're moving on to the books that got 3.5 stars, and the first of those is The Don't Girls by Octavia Cade, which was a horror novella, and it tells about Bluebeard's wife and Pandora from Myth traveling together across time and space to meet these women from history or tales. The name Don't Girls comes from women who are told don't do this but do it anyway. This was an interesting combination that I enjoyed, but I didn't know what to think about the ending in particular. But I'm really into Octavia Cade's writing style and darker themes. By the way, this is another book that could fit into fairy tales. I complained in my yearly wrap-up that I only read 1 book that were considered fairy tales, but actually this had fairy tale elements like Bluebeard's wife, but I put it under horror in my spreadsheet, so it didn't show in my year-end stats. The Tea Master and the Detective by Alia de Bodar was a science fiction reimagining of Sherlock Holmes, where Sherlock is a woman and Watson is a spaceship. I really enjoyed the characters, even though I wasn't that into the plot, but I would read more about these characters. I also reread Changeless by Gail Carriger on audio, and this is about werewolves and a castle on the Scottish Highlands. It's a fun steampunk paranormal romp, and I remembered I liked this one more on my first read, so I don't know what happened there. The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson is a horror novella where whenever Molly bleeds, she spawns murderous clones of herself. I like that this novella answered my most pressing question, which was, do periods count? And yes, they do. Then a Moomin book, Muumipappa ja Meri, or Moominpapa at Sea in English by Tove Jansson. And this is quite a dark Moomin book about Moominpapa's midlife crisis, which moves the whole family onto this desolate island with a lighthouse. I also read by Tove Jansson Muumilaakson Marraskuu or Moomin Valley in November, which finished my Moomin reread. This was about some residents of the Moomin Valley who moved into the Moomin house while their family was away on that lighthouse island. And these last 2 Moomin books felt more like they were written for adults than children. The Art of Space Travel by Nina Allen was a science fiction novelette about this hotel housekeeper who is very interested in the second Mars expedition that is approaching. I really like the writing style. Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodie Taylor is a very entertaining book about the society of time travelers who study history. The plot moves a mile a minute and has both very comic events and very serious events happen, but it doesn't really pause enough for either for them to have a big impact. Cards on the Table by Agatha Christie is another Poirot novel. In this one, Poirot is invited to a party where apparently murderers are present, uncaught murderers, and of course the host of the party ends up being murdered. This one was interesting because it also featured other detective characters by Christie. My 3.5-star comics were Princess Jellyfish 2-in-1 Omnibus Volume 6 by Akiko Higashimura. This is a manga about a group of geek girls, and this 2-in-1 volume of course included 2 volumes, and I would give one of them, the first one I think 4 stars and the second one 3 stars, so that is 3.5 stars. I wasn't sure how I felt about some of the plot elements of this one. I also gave 3.5 stars to, again, Full Metal Alchemist, this time volumes 13, 15, 16 and 17 by Hiromu Arakawa. Now moving on to the 4-star books. First is Clockwork Boys and The Wonder Engine by T. Kingfisher. This is a fun high fantasy duology about a group of criminals on a mission, and I talk more about this in my Best Books of 2018 video. Also, the short story collection Tender Stories by Sofia Samatar got 4 stars. This was a collection of science fiction and fantasy short stories from her, and I loved some of them, like Olympia's Ghost, while I feel like some of them might have a bigger impact on other people who might get more out of them. For example, some had themes of second-generation immigrants. The Furthest Station by Ben Aronovich was a novella in the Peter Grant urban fantasy police procedural series, and this was a fun romp. It was fun to be in this world again. It was about ghosts in the London Underground. Binti the Night Masquerade by Nnedi Okorafor was the final novella in this science fiction novella series called Binti. In this one, the Saturn ring part was my favorite part. Artificial Condition by Martha Wells was another science fiction novella in the Murderbot Diaries series. Murderbot is this AI who has hacked its governor unit and is self-aware. In this one, Murderbot goes to research this mining facility from its past. And I really enjoyed in this one the relationship between Murderbot and this research transport ship called Art. Rogue Protocol by Martha Wells also got 4 stars. It is the 3rd novella in this same Murderbot series. Even though I didn't like it as much as the second one, I still gave it 4 stars. And in this one, Murderbot goes to check this abandoned terraforming facility in space. I was not as interested in the plot or the characters in this one. Moving on to the comics that got 4 stars, the first of those is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Chen Wang. This is a beautifully drawn graphic novel where a dressmaker called Francis is hired by a prince called Sebastian to make dresses for the prince's alter ego, the Lady Crystalia. Chen Wang is so good at conveying emotion through expressions drawn in simple lines. By Chance or Providence by Becky Cloonan collects together 3 dark and beautiful short stories that Cloonan originally self-published. There's also a beautiful art gallery at the back. This is great if you love dark artwork in strong black inks, and the stories are so eerie and atmospheric. The Wicked and the Divine Volume 6, Imperial Face Part 2 by Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey also got 4 stars. This is the 6th comic trade in the series about reincarnated gods in modern day who reincarnate as young pop stars, and they live for 2 years and then must die. The main character is a young black woman who really wants to become a god, and she is a great character, and the artwork in this is also consistently beautiful. Princess Jellyfish 2-in-1 Omnibus Volume 7 by Akiko Higashimura got 4 stars. This volume about the group of geek girls who start a fashion line with a cross-dressing boy had a different setting from the others. I still liked it, but it's not my favorite in the series. The Girl from the Other Side, Shula Run, Volumes 3 and 4 by Nagabe also got 4 stars, both of them. This is a beautiful dark fairy tale of a manga about this monster who takes care of this little girl. These always just warm my heart, while they also have darker themes. Delicious in Dungeon Volume 1 by Ryoko Kui is this fun fantasy comedy manga about a group of adventurers who eat the monsters they kill. 2 of the group are very into it, and 2 are not as much. And we're once again back at Full Metal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. I gave 4 stars to volumes 4, 6, 7, 9, 18, 19, 21, 23, 24 and 25. I love the characters, and the author is very good at delivering emotional beats. We're nearing the end and moving on to 4.5 stars. The book that got 4.5 stars from me was The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss, which I also talk about in my favorite books of 2018 video, but I think in that one I said that I gave it 4 stars. 4.54, it's somewhere along those lines. Anyway, this is about a group of young women from different Gothic literature classics who band together to solve mysteries and help each other. Fullmetal Alchemist Volume 10 by Hiromu Arakawa was the only comic to get 4.5 stars. I actually don't remember what happened in this volume, but apparently it was good. And the book that I gave 5 stars to was the short story The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It's a classic horror short story. I talk about this in my favorite books of 2018 video. It's basically about a woman locked in a room where she has to stare at the yellow wallpaper. I also gave 5 stars to Fullmetal Alchemist Volume 11 by Hiromu Arakawa because it was the one Fullmetal Alchemist volume that made me cry. So those were all the books, and now I'm just gonna briefly mention 3 short stories I also read. I read this during March in the All the Short Ones readathon. First is She Commands Me and I Obey by Anne Leckie, which is a story set in the Ancillary Justice universe. I had to Google how it fit in the universe after finishing it, but then I felt a bit stupid for not getting the connection. But in my defense, it has been a while since I read the books. I also read Rappaccini's Daughter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is a classic short story, and it's about this schoolboy who falls in love with a girl whose touch is poison. I read this because Rappaccini's Daughter is a character in Theodora Gossi's The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, and I wanted to know the original story. And then I also read the short story Those Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a classic science fiction short story that was sadly spoiled for me by the preface to the story. And that is all. I have no idea how long this video is, but I will try to be better at talking about the books that I read in 2019. I think my reads and receipts videos will help me to do that because they are monthly and I go through what I read. So that's all from me about 2018, and I'll see you in my next video.